peace, and related words like justice, reconciliation, and all that. This language is Pali, number 23, which is the language of Buddha. And it has preserved the Pali Canon, which is the original authentic words of Buddha, in a language that's close to Sanskrit but different. It was spoken around in Magadha, where Buddha came from. The word Pali means a line or a row or a series, and it means a series of texts. The British Buddhist scholars, when we were in Sri Lanka, discovered that they preserved the original Pali Canon. So we all went to Sri Lanka and got copies of them and translated them into English. Thomas Rhys Davids was a great Buddhist scholar at SOAS, where I was partly a student, School of Oriental and African Studies. And the Pali Canon is amazing. It's very rigorous in its analysis of mind and consciousness. So the Pali text, the Pali language is used for that. We know about the Buddhist councils that took place. The first one took place just after his death in Rajgriha in 483 BC. And the sutras were then spoken from memory and recited, and then they were written down. And that is the origin of the Pali Canon. So these words were kind of remembers. The next second council took place 100 years after Buddha's death. And the third council, about 150 years after that, at Patna, Pataliputra, which I've been to. And that was convoked by the Emperor Ashoka. Now Ashoka, who was a great monarch in India, sent his son to Sri Lanka with the scriptures, and they brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka. So the Pali Canon was taken to Sri Lanka. I've got friends in Sri Lanka, in Kandy. And this isn't in the book, I'm just doing a little aside here. They've asked me to help set up a centre for an international British centre in Sri Lanka to teach British philosophy, poetry, culture, etc. Because for a long time English was not really welcome in Sri Lanka, but now they've discovered it's actually quite a useful language to learn, and so they want to get more knowledge of British philosophy and literature and stuff in Sri Lanka.
If you allow me to interrupt, makes me think about Kumar Rupasinghe and International Alert in London.
He was Sri Lankan, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was there, but yes.
Yeah.
And he was
great
Amnesty
scholar
International
of
and
peace,
yes, for peace. So
Yeah.
so there is a piece in that institute you're talking about that you will bring.
Well, we can learn a huge amount from Sri Lanka. I think it will work both ways.
Yes.
And although I've not been there, I've been to southern India. And, I've studied Sri Lankan culture. So anyway, all that's here in the Pali language. And the word for peace is Shanti.
Shanti.
Which is same as the Sanskrit, which is the name I gave to my youngest daughter. She's called Shanti-Grace. And it means peace. It comes from a stem meaning cessation, tranquility, peace, calmness. And it's similar to other Asian languages: Khmer, Shanti, Lao, Shanti, Thai, Shanti, Punjabi, Shant, Bengali, Shanti, and so on. It's a girl's name, and that's why I gave it to my daughter, because hopefully she will go forward as a peace artisan. So anyway, that's the language for this. The project is got a Latin title. It's called Universalis et Illuminatio Completus, which means universal and complete enlightenment. This is these are extremely ambitious projects. I don't expect them to be completed during this lifetime. Right? This project, which was first announced in 2024, is the first time to make a link between enlightenment and disarmament. I argued in the 2024 declaration of the International Conference on Peace and Non-Violence that, here's the quote, "To achieve our goal of complete comprehensive and universal peace, non-violence and nuclear disarmament. We affirm that we need to achieve universal, comprehensive and complete enlightenment. We affirm that the shape of environmentally sustainable world enlightenment is finally round. So that's like a koan, you know. I mean, I've done a lot of study on the nature of enlightenment. I've given a MA course on it, and some people think enlightenment is sort of abandoning the planet, leaving your body, becoming a spirit and floating up to nirvana, and leaving everything, you know, totally ruined and screwed up and smoking piles of nuclear rubble. No, I'm saying enlightenment is, from a bodhisattva perspective, is precisely doing the opposite. It's transforming this world into the Shambhala kingdom, into the place of enlightenment. So getting rid of the nuclear weapons, getting rid of injustice, getting rid of poverty and gross inequality of wealth and all that. That's enlightenment, is bringing the divine kingdom or grace of Shambhala down to this plane. And that's what this project's about, universal and complete enlightenment. And it's an appeal, so, you know, how are we going to do it? Well, I describe how we can do it. We need to network with all the different traditions. Every religion on the periodic table, which we're going to come to in a minute, has its own kind of enlightenment teaching, whether you're Shinto or Jain or Buddhist or Christian, Sufi, Islamic, Jewish, they all have something, the Norse, the runes, the Druids. So I'm saying, let's get together, bring all the great scholars of all these traditions together, ask them to listen to each other, to respect each other's paths to enlightenment, and then work out a sort of, it's almost like a mathematical thing we have to do. We have to work out a triangulation, a parallax thing, whereby we can all meet. At what point can we get Jewish, Islamic, Christian, Buddhist, pagan thinkers to say, well, if we did this and we did that, and we aimed at that angle, we could get universal and complete enlightenment. I think it's in the texts of all the traditions. I've studied them all. I assure you, it is in the traditions. And that's what the project's about. It's about getting scholars to wake up and do it, you know.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a question on that one.
Go for it.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do, yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
this is, you have to enlighten me on this one. But I heard that Shambhala warriors,
Yes.
it's it's the rainbow flag, the Shambhala warriors.
Yeah.
It's cool. And then, so this rainbow flag and the activism of, call it universal love that we see under the rainbow flag.
Yes.
But the Shambhala warriors were standing up to protect Mother Earth. So there is so under the rainbow, every time the rainbow is shining, and the march of as the way we understand
the gay liberation.
Gay
marches.
liberation.
Yeah, well, that's part of the story, isn't it?
It's part of the story.
Their freedom.
The freedom, the love, this universal love story
Yeah.
that is actually in the streets.
Whatever your
So what
sexual
is the
preference,
tongue? Enlighten us a little bit on the Shambhala flag or the rainbow warriors.
So the term was really popularized by a great Buddhist teacher called Chogyam Trungpa,
Okay.
who came out of Tibet. He was the lineage holder, the Trungpa of his day. He inspired me a great deal when I first, as a young philosophy student, came across his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And it was an absolute, like, what? You know, it was coming from such a deep place. He was a recognised incarnate Lama who did a degree in philosophy at the University of Oxford. So he learned Western thought and he knew Eastern thought. Put them together in a synthesis. He founded Sammy Ling in Scotland, where I've taught, and then he went on to found Naropa University in Boulder in Colorado, which is the most important Buddhist Western university.
Okay.
And he founded a training in his inner circles for Shambhala warriors, Shambhala training, where you learn the basic skills of mind purification, meditation skills to get rid of the angst and the neuroses that we will have, and how to focus your will, your energy on right action,
Yeah.
right thought, and so on. He was a master, he's dead sadly now, but his work lives on. I'm reading a book at the moment called Buddha in the Office by one of his disciples who supplied those teachings, like how can you cope in the workplace if you're being bullied or everyone's fighting and bitching, how can you bring Shambhala wisdom into the workplace?
So the Shambhala wisdom is actually the rainbow flag, like we saw. It started the gay movement in California.
I think it goes back to Noah. The rainbow association with peace was, of course, in the Bible. Noah, after the ark, and by the way, Noah was a Sumerian sage. He's pre the biblical text. His name from Sumeria, and he survives the flood.
Okay. Yes.
And he survives the flood because the God of wisdom, Ea, whispers how he can survive it is build an ark. That got in the text of the Bible, and then God sends a rainbow as a sign to mankind that won't happen again. He won't destroy us again. It's a sign of God's compassion to us. We are a pretty miserable bunch and we're quite ignorant, but God himself has compassion over us. So how it got to Tibet and why it became the flag of the Buddhists, Tibetans love colour. If you've ever been to a Tibetan house, they have bright colours, like their houses are rainbow colours. I have a lot of Tibetan stuff here. And the important thing to know is the Shambhala teachings themselves are that Shambhala is a kingdom which is very difficult of access. It actually exists now. You can go there, but you have to be purified and done your karmic purifications and all that work to get in. And the people that live there live very, very long lives. It's like a sort of spiritual kingdom, somewhere in the high Himalayas. It's not quite known where. And I've got books that show, the guide to Shambhala.
Really?
Yeah, how to get there. But it's, yes, and the difference between where they live and where the world that we inhabit is those guys never lost sight of cosmic law, of the law of compassion and the law of love. Whereas our people, unfortunately, the social media cyber warriors and their ignorant paymasters, are fighting the opposite. And there are dark forces on the planet, and they have been fighting the Shambhala kingdom for a long time, according to tradition.
How is this relevant for us today in Ukraine and
by
other wars?
Yes, I mean, even if one has to fight as a warrior, and I'm a druid, I don't fight, I'm not a warrior, but this life, but I'm a druid, so what happened in the old Celtic world is it was the druids that sanctioned the warriors to go into action. However, if they go into action, they have to obey certain rules, and they have to follow dharmic laws, even in that. And that was the point of Muhammad's law of jihad. It's a very strictly controlled thing. You don't slaughter innocents, you don't slaughter women and children, you don't destroy the environment, you don't poison wells, you don't cut down trees. All this is being disregarded by modern warfare. And that's why my Irish friends have created this Lex Innocentium project, which I ask people to sign, based on the teachings of the Irish saint Adumnan, who was from Iona, which is the cradle of British Christianity, founded by Columba. And he got the first ever agreement in Europe for protection of innocents during time of warfare, so that warriors would not be able to kill everybody and pollute and destroy nature, but just have a sort of decent fight, warrior to warrior, and the one that won. And that was passed. Adumnan got all the rebel Irish chieftains and Scots to sign it, and even the King of England out in Northumbria signed it. So what we're doing is revising that, because at the moment drone warfare, what's been going on in Gaza, is utterly against the dharmic laws of war. It's just hysteria. And what Putin is doing in Syria and now in Ukraine, just slaughtering and destroying cities, again, completely adharmic. It's not how the Shambhala warriors fight. So anyway, it's a good question. If you're interested in the details, you know, we've got a ways to go to get universal and complete enlightenment. My job as a scholar and a druid and a philosopher is to sort of sketch some of the routes we can follow, and that's what these 99 projects are. Anyway, I hope people find them interesting. You know, thank you. Let's do our periodic table now. Jan, have you chosen one?
112.
112. Oh, okay. Philosophical Sikhism. Great, excellent. Okay. And have you two chosen one? You're going to have one each or a separate one?
One each.
Have one
Sure,
each.
I'm going very close. I'm going 110. I want to hear about New Age.
Ah, okay, that's a good choice.
And I take
Yeah.
113. Aristotle.
Oh, oh, that's jolly good. That's all in a row. Right, super.
Why are they in a row?
Well, because you've
Numbered.
chosen those particular numbers. It's not bingo, but it could be if we had. We could turn this in. Actually, one of my plans is to turn this into a sort of board game.
No, but you
Or
know,
computer
but you know, one is grey and two are like other green.
There's
the
a
key
user
here.
manual on top.
All right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry for my ignorance. Whoops.
it's all right. Everyone is
But
ignorant
it's
about.
more or less a timeline, correct?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
chronology starting at the top,
So
working
these are
down.
more or less the same time period in history.
Yeah.
It
Have you not
starts
seen
here.
the periodic table before, Ingemeta?
Yes, but I've been ignorant, lazy.
You haven't been studying it, yeah. Okay. So there is a
No,
book that
it's-
comes with it, and it's online.
Yes, you know, I'm honest. I haven't studied that much, you know.
Well, you're too busy. You're more of an activist, an artisan of peace, as we've discovered.
I'm
we call you.
artisan
Yeah. And you've been travelling.
of Shambhala.
Yeah, yeah. And you like to globetrot. You've been to Spain. You've been to
No,
Africa
no, no, no,
recently.
no. I've been home
know.
in the kitchen, my own kitchen,
Yes.
Where you belong.
We believe that.
where I belong.
Okay, so look, these are great. These three. Let's start with the earliest, which is Aristotle, actually, 113, and I want to share a bit about this. So, I've been a fan of Aristotle ever since I actually read him properly in Canada, using the library of the philosophy department of the University of Calgary. They had the complete works of all philosophers throughout history, and I was a young man about age 21, 22. And I had the time and the discipline and the energy. And I remember sitting in the library at Calgary University reading Aristotle, and it's like a light went off. It's like, that's why they call him the philosopher. You know, which is his name. In Islamic and Jewish and Christian texts, they just say the philosopher said. They don't even bother to say the name. So, and ever since, I've been reading and studying him, what impressed me about Aristotle was the breadth of mind. He was a scientist. He coined new fields of knowledge like biology and zoology, meteorology, weather studies, like way ahead. But he was also interested in politics. He developed political science for the first ever time, analysing different types of constitutions. He also developed logic, because his mind thought he must have had a Virgo sign, because he thought in terms of lists and categories. And he wanted to see how thought itself follows certain laws, certain types of things grouped with other types of things. And he came up with a list of 10 things. Everything can be analysed into 10 types of things. So, what is a cup? Well, it's a thing that holds stuff. Well, so do lots of other things, like a barrel, or, a womb, or a stomach. So, yeah, but it's a special kind of thing because it's mobile, and we make them to drink out of. So he would, in his logic, he finds a way of analysing all reality according to certain rules. And he invented the syllogism, which is a way of proving formal arguments or disproving them. Because obviously his ultimate aim is to find truth. He also invented metaphysics, first thinker to do so, which is his teacher Plato, who was like an inspired poet of philosophy. left everything kind of in the etheric realm. Everything is beautiful. It's like an ideal. What Aristotle wanted was to ground it and make it real so that ordinary people can grasp it and do something with it. A bit like your question, how can we ground Shambhala now into our needs now as a planet? That's an Aristotelian type question. He was a lover of women. He understood the importance of relationships. He was twice married, in fact. And he wrote one of his best works on ethics to his son, Nicomachus. And I'm reading it at the moment as it happens. The Nicomachean Ethics is absolutely a masterpiece. You know, every student, everyone interested in philosophy should read this book. His influence was enormous. And he was supposed to be, after Plato, he should have really been the head of the academy, but he was passed over, and he set up his own school called the Lyceum, which then lasted for several hundred years. And I've been to the grounds in Athens of the Lyceum. We had lectures there during the World Congress of Philosophy in Athens in 2013, and it was just wonderful to hear a lecture about Aristotle in the grounds of the Lyceum.
You're blessed.
It was and I was sitting next to a Russian philosopher, specialist in Buddhism, sitting chatting on the wall of the Lyceum. That's what we should be doing with our Russian colleagues, not fighting and killing each other.
So I want to follow up question. He was for Alexander the Great warrior.
Thank you. Yes.
And
he was the teacher of Alexander.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how can we see? Well, as we know that the strategy of a war is still used. Alexander the Great in Balkan was it used? They learn it in military schools. So how can that? How is that connected to peace again? You know, and divine
Sure.
reality. Can
Thank
you
you.
enlighten me on that one?
Well, you know, it's a great question because Alexander was a young student, a boy. He was the son of the king, Philip of Macedon. And the reason Alexander gave that job, or his father, Philip, gave the job to Aristotle, was because Aristotle's father was the medical doctor to Philip of Macedon. He was from a long line of medical doctors. And that's why Aristotle thought in such clear terms, right? Because he wanted to diagnose the problems of humanity and find solutions. Anyway, he taught the young Alexander, who loved philosophy actually, and shouldn't be underestimated. He was probably the greatest military genius of all time. You know, he won ridiculous battles against all the odds by using clear strategy. But his goal, Alexander the Great's goal ultimately was, and this is like a complex paradox, was to bring world peace. His vision was to create a great empire uniting East and West. He gave a famous speech when he conquered Persia saying, now I want all these racial distinctions. I don't care whether you're Greek or Persian or Afghani or whatever, you know, let's all live as one great empire and I will be just and fair to everyone. And I think that was his long-term vision. He had the view that if everyone could join this sort of world empire, then peace could break out because it'd be guaranteed by law. There'd be a sort of an overarching body. This was the vision that drove the British Empire. You know, they had the same idea. It was what drove the Roman Empire. Caesar loved Alexander.
Oh.
In fact. And the idea was, you know, everybody can join this one empire. I don't think Aristotle felt that Alexander lived up to the mission. His goal was for world peace. But towards the end, he became corrupted and drank too much, lost his temper, and killed one of his best generals in a violent fit, threw a javelin at him, and lost a lot of the support that he'd had, and dissipated himself and died at a young age in his 30s in Babylon. I wish he'd lived longer and fulfilled his mission of world peace. So in a sense, we're having to pick up the pieces where he left. But in fact, let me just finish. In founding Alexandria, That was one of his best things he did
Yes, yes.
as a centre for learning. And he went to the Oracle at Siwa, which you can tell us about in a minute because I know you've been there. And he was there and told that he was the son of God by the Oracle of Zeus Ammon, the Greek and Egyptian gods. And that, you know, I suspend judgment whether he was a son of God and what that means, but I've written a paper about this, and I think that that's the origin of it's one of the sources of the Christian idea that Christ is the son of God. What they mean by that is that Christ was a sort of superhero, and so was Alexander, a superhero. But I would rank Christ higher than Alexander because he didn't use violence. I think Christ was progress on Alexander. Similar idea, you know, unity, peace between all peoples, nations, but not using violence. And in a sense, Christ's mission was much more difficult and led to tragic, you know, crucifixions and things. But that vision hasn't gone. When we talked to our friend in Bethlehem, the Christian in Palestine, the other night, they're still waiting for this vision to be realised. Why can't they live in peace in every Middle Eastern country? That's the dream of Alexander the Great. It's also the dream of Christ. And later also Muhammad, because just to say that in the Islamic world, Aristotle is dearly loved. I've met leading Islamic philosophers who read Aristotle in Arabic. His works were translated to Arabic, and you can't be a philosopher in the Islamic world and not know not just your Aristotle, but your Islamic commentators on Aristotle. The greatest of whom was from Spain, Ibn Rushd, in Cordoba, who did commentaries on all of Aristotle, synthesizing and reconciling it with the Quran. Because what Aristotle said is that behind everything there's a divine mover, there's a cause, an ultimate cause. And the Muslims say, okay, that's Allah, that's what we're saying in the Quran. And therefore ethics comes from that fact. We all have the same ultimate cause.
Yes.
You know. So tell us about Siwa.
No.
Because I'm you're one of the two people I know who went there. I know Evelyn Lindner also went to Siwa.
Yeah.
But tell
I've
me-
been a couple of times to Siwa,
Right.
and I've been working with Dr. Munir Namatala in Cairo and in Siwa. And I was also organizing curating the opening conference for young people in the Library of Alexandria.
Which was built by a
2002.
Norwegian architect, wasn't
Yes,
it? And
Norwegian
you've
architect.
met those people, or you know of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Siwa, so it's the desert, and it's beautiful to travel through the desert and come down to the oasis where you see the water. And
It's in Egypt, isn't it?
In
The
Egypt.
far edge.
it's all on the edge towards
Libya.
Libya.
Yeah.
So it's direct from Al Alamein, direct
Yeah,
90
yeah.
degrees straight into the.
I knew someone that fought there.
Yes, yeah. But let me not talk too much about Siwa in this context. But I like to go back to Aristotle
Sure.
and what you mentioned about even in the Muslim world, they like him as a philosopher.
Yeah, they revere.
When you mention this, it makes me feel that it's an entering point for interfaith dialogues, and you know you also have the Greek and Alexander the Great, and as you said, you know, the Muslim loves him. It's the story of Akhenaten, what's behind the ultimate sun god, huh? So you have an entering point. Some is
Sure, thank you.
in fact,
Well, I've been
Africa.
saying this for the last 25 years. Why do you think I set up Philosophers of Peace?
Yeah.
Why have I done all this interfaith peace work? Because not only is he revered among the Islamic philosophers,
Yeah.
Aristotle is revered among Jewish philosophers.
Yes.
The greatest Jewish philosopher, Maimonides,
Yeah.
who wrote Guide to the Perplexed, a medieval thinker, came from the same city as Ibn Rushd, Cordoba, where I've been. And he is still to this day, if you're a rabbi studying in Judaism, he is the greatest philosopher of Judaism. And he based his teachings on reconciling the Bible with Aristotle.
Right.
and his ethics. So
I didn't know.
Jewish philosophers, they love Aristotle too. And then to cap it all, the same in Christianity, because
Yes.
the greatest Christian philosophers, especially Thomas Aquinas,
Yes.
here in Europe and France is greatly revered. He did the same. He reconciled the biblical text with Aristotle, and he wrote his Summa Theologica, which I've been listening to. It's 88 hours, and I'm only halfway through. Going through every detail of the Bible and trying to explain it according to Aristotle's logic.
Really?
Yeah. And so we've got Islam, Judaism, Christianity, all Aristotelians. And so that's why I run Philosophers of Peace, trying to get them all together. And so poor old Aristotle would be tearing his hair out in heaven at all this Gaza nonsense and the wars and also Hamas attacking Israel. Totally
So
unethical.
you also have this other aspect of ecology with Aristotle. Maybe you can express this. What is that?
Well, okay, that's also very important. He was a lover of biology and life and love and sex and the real organic matter. Unlike Plato, who sort of wants to drift off into the realm of ideals and waft around like a spirit, Aristotle said, no, we have physical forms, let's study them. Where do they come from? What is life as in organic matter? He said that life is matter which is imbued with an instinctive purpose and end, and it's called in Greek the telos.
Teos.
Telos, T-E-L-O-S. So what's unique about life, say it's my cat, she comes in, she's got a purpose in mind, get the food, and if he doesn't give it to me, give him a little scratch to make him do it, you know. So we're engineered with a goal directed, whereas a rock, inanimate matter, isn't. You know, it just sits there and is rockness. Whereas all living forms have this telos. So that's the first important thing about Aristotle's view of biology. And this is now, biologists have begun to realise that actually this is true, and that all of life shares this sort of purpose, goal-directed behaviour. And so he's still important Darwin in his great work on, the evolution of species, he references Aristotle many times. He was his favourite biologist, actually. So when it comes to ecology and what we're doing to the planet and looking at how we're dealing with life as a whole and the work of Gaia theory and, Aristotle is very much there. His ideas are still relevant. Peace with nature.
Peace with nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you. Anyway, great questions. Right, that's that one. Let's move on to the next one, which I think in chronological sequence is the Sikh one, from Jan, the Sikh philosophical tradition. So there's kind of two schools of Sikhism. I know it's a gross oversimplification, but for the sake of the table, they're divided into religious Sikhism and philosophical Sikhism. So in religious Sikhism, you go to the Gurdwara, you do your prayers, you read from the Adi Granth, which is their biblical text, their equivalent to the Bible, and you go to Amritsar, which I've done, and you cross the lake into the Golden Temple in the middle. Have you been to the Punjab? No. They have certain rules. They grow long beards. They don't cut their hair. So I had a dear friend of mine, Surjit Singh, a Sikh, who took me to India to meet his guru in the Punjab. And Surjit Singh, I'd never known because they wear turbans, right? But his hair was really long, like down to his waist. And they only unravel that at night when they take the turban off. And it's